The deal was not a victory, it was a pause. On the 14th of June 2026, the United States and Iran announced an agreement to end more than 100 days of open warfare in the Middle East. The headlines called it peace. It is not peace. It is a memorandum of understanding, a 60-day ceasefire with a signing ceremony scheduled for the 19th of June in Geneva, Switzerland. And buried inside that document are the very conditions that will determine whether this region stabilizes or explodes again within the year. What the media is telling you is that Donald Trump won, that Iran blinked, that the Strait of Hormuz is open, the oil is flowing, and the crisis is over. What the media is not telling you is that the three most dangerous questions of this entire conflict remain completely unanswered. Iran's nuclear program is still intact. Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium has not been dismantled. And the final agreement, the one that would actually resolve these issues, has been pushed into negotiations that have not yet begun. This is not the end of the Iran crisis. This is the beginning of its most complicated phase. Let us go back to the 28th of February 2026. The United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes across Iran. The first target was Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. The opening salvo of this war did not just strike military infrastructure, it struck the heart of the Iranian regime. Within hours, Iran responded with hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones, fired across the region at American bases, Israeli cities, and Gulf state allies. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 30% of the world's seaborne oil passes, was effectively shut down. Global energy markets went into shock. Oil prices surged. European governments scrambled. And for 100 days, the world held its breath. Now let us talk about what this deal actually contains and what it does not. The first key point is what both sides agreed to. Iran and the United States have agreed to an immediate and permanent cessation of military operations on all fronts. That includes Lebanon, where Israeli strikes had been ongoing since the 2nd of March. The United States naval blockade on Iranian ports will be lifted. Iran's de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz will end. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who along with Qatar served as a key mediator, confirmed that both sides have declared the termination of hostilities. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that the deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. He authorized toll-free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. "Ships of the world," he wrote, "start your engines." That is the surface of this agreement. Now let us go deeper. The second key point is what this deal deliberately postpones. The Memorandum of Understanding does not resolve Iran's nuclear file. It defers it. Iran will repeat its long-standing pledge that it will never acquire a nuclear weapon. But Iran has made that pledge before, in 2015, under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. That deal took 2 years to negotiate. It was abandoned by Trump himself in 2018. Now the same administration is asking Iran to enter a new round of technical negotiations on the very same questions. How much uranium can Iran enrich? What happens to its existing stockpile of highly enriched uranium? And what verification mechanisms will be in place? These are not small questions. These are the questions that started this war, and they remain open. The Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington has noted that Iran will try to play for time. Tehran knows that Trump faces midterm elections in November. The incentive to restart a military campaign before those elections is extremely low. Iran will use that window. And Iran has used similar windows before. After the original nuclear agreement collapsed in 2018, Iran did not sit idle. It accelerated its enrichment program. It expanded its centrifuge capacity. It brought its stockpile of highly enriched uranium to levels that had never been seen before the deal existed. The lesson Iran drew from that period is simple. Negotiate, but never fully disarm. That lesson has not changed. The third key point is the economic dimension of this agreement. In exchange for entering negotiations on its nuclear program, Iran is expected to receive access to billions of dollars in frozen assets. Sanctions relief is also on the table. These are significant economic incentives, and they matter because the Iranian economy has been under severe strain since 2018. Inflation, unemployment, and currency collapse have created enormous internal pressure on the Iranian government. The protests of 2025 and 2026, during which Iranian security forces massacred thousands of civilians, made that internal pressure impossible to ignore. The regime needs economic relief. This deal provides a pathway to that relief. But economic incentives are not the same as a strategic settlement. Iran will take the money. Iran will re-enter negotiations. And Iran will negotiate from a position of knowing that the United States does not want another war before November. That is not a position of weakness. That is leverage. Now let us talk about the parties that are not celebrating this deal. Israel's government has described this agreement as a deep disappointment. Israel entered this war with specific objectives: the dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the permanent degradation of the Iranian military's offensive capability. Neither of those objectives has been achieved. The Memorandum of Understanding does not address Iran's missile program. It does not address Iran's network of regional proxies in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria. It addresses the immediate shooting war, and that is all. For Israel, this deal ends the phase of the conflict in which it had American military power directly alongside it. What comes next, the nuclear negotiations, the sanctions framework, the verification regime, will be conducted by diplomats, not soldiers. And Israel has very limited influence over that process. There is also the question of the water infrastructure strike on the 10th of June. A drinking water reservoir in the Bamani district of southern Iran was struck. 2 concrete storage tanks with a combined capacity of 2,500 cubic meters were destroyed. Weapons experts identified the munition as a GBU-39 series precision-guided bomb, produced in the United States. Water facilities are protected under the Geneva Convention. This detail has received almost no coverage in mainstream Western media. It will not disappear. It will resurface in the negotiations, and Iran will use it as both a legal argument and a propaganda tool against Washington. Now for the implications. The reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is real and significant. Energy markets will begin to stabilize. But experts have warned that oil and gas supplies could take months to return to normal levels. The infrastructure disruption caused by 100 days of conflict does not reverse itself overnight. European governments, France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom have welcomed the agreement and committed to contributing naval assets to secure the strait. They have also stated they are prepared to lift relevant sanctions in response to clear and verifiable steps by Iran on its nuclear program. But they have added a condition. Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon, and any agreement must be verified by the International Atomic Energy Agency. That condition sounds reasonable. It is also the exact condition Iran has historically resisted. The Group of 7 summit in France this week, the 15th to 17th of June, is a critical moment for consolidating Western support around this framework. Trump will meet European and Arab leaders. The scope and timing of economic incentives to Iran will be a central discussion. And Trump has already cut his Group of 7 attendance short, citing the Middle East situation. The signal that sends is ambiguous at best. Now my 2 predictions. First, the 60-day negotiating window will not produce a final agreement. The technical disputes over uranium enrichment levels and Iran's existing stockpile are too complex to resolve in 60 days. What is more likely is a further extension, another temporary framework that keeps the ceasefire in place while the harder questions are deferred again. This pattern is familiar. It is how the original nuclear agreement process worked. It took years. This will too. Second, Israel will conduct independent military action before the end of 2026. With American military cover effectively withdrawn from the equation, and with Iran's nuclear infrastructure still functioning, Israel faces a strategic window that is closing. If the negotiations extend into late 2026 without a credible dismantlement agreement, the probability of an Israeli unilateral strike on Iranian nuclear sites increases significantly. That is not speculation. That is the logic of the situation. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe this deal will hold for 60 days? Or do you think one side will break it before the signing ceremony even takes place on the 19th of June? Tell me in the comments below. If this analysis gave you something the mainstream media did not, subscribe to this channel. I will see you in the next one.